when did the light bulb go off in your head? When did you first say to yourself, I think I want to be a rabbi?
Oh, a rabbi came many years later.
Oh.
Many years later. In fact, when I decided that I wanted to be a Chabad rabbi, and by Chabad rabbi, I'll define that, we define that, we call it in our circles as an emissary. It's actually the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the leader of the Chabad movement, and one of the greatest leader in Jewry of the 20th century. So he called the rabbis in his network emissaries, or in Hebrew shluchim, and that's in my opinion, that's a very special, obligation or a very special career path. And I didn't decide to be a shaliach, an emissary, until I was probably somewhere around 19 or 20 years old.
Still in Pittsburgh at this point?
No. I graduated high school. I actually graduated high school early. Mm-hmm. I couldn't handle it anymore.
I'm with you there.
I went to yeshiva in Israel for a year. Okay. It was a great year in many respects. And then I transitioned to a yeshiva called the Rabbinical College of America in Morristown, New Jersey. Okay. And I would say that's like I think it's like in games and probably like Mario Kart or something. I'm sure I played enough of as a kid with my GameCube, where you get like a nitro boost that like blasts you to ahead of everybody. So those 2 years in yeshiva was my nitro boost as a person, and it wasn't just the yeshiva. By the way, is a rabbinical seminary, rabbinical school. It is an accredited university. It's Rabbinical College of America. The experiences that I had over there, not in and out of school, are what formed me and made me who I am today. I learned from some of the greatest minds. I spent 2 years with some of the greatest friends, people that I'm connected with and very close to. In fact, one of my friends that I met in rabbinical school is the reason I came to Toronto. And then out of yeshiva, I spent 2 summers helping run a Jewish camp for Jewish kids in Ukraine. In fact, one of the years, the campsite that we did camp on the last time I was a counselor is now under Russian occupation, which is pretty crazy.
Yes. Different world now.
Different world. Completely different world.
So many different ways.
And by the way, I'm saying the whole current events hit me very personally. First of all, my mother's family is from Ukraine. My wife is from Ukraine. My in-laws live in my house now because of the war. I have friends all over the country. I have a good friend whose father didn't make it out of the country, unlike a lot of other colleagues of mine, and is now serving his community under full-on Russian occupation, and it's insane. And this is and you're asking me what brought you to want to do this? Yes. These kind of people. I had the opportunity to 6 times as an unmarried student travel to Central Asia, to Kazakhstan, famous for the movie Borat. It's not from what I understand, I didn't watch the movie, but from what I understand, it's nothing like it was portrayed. It's a great country. No anti-Semitism. I heard that Borat...
You have seen Borat of any kind of level?
I saw maybe some clips, but I heard that in the movie, Kazakhstan is a very anti-Semitic place.
He's a little bit of a, I'm saying tongue-in-cheek, is a little bit of a parody. Don't know how exact he is.
I know the idea, and I know Sacha Baron Cohen. I come to learn about it.
Yes.
Kazakhstan is nothing like in Borat.
Yes.
Kazakhstan is a place where I must say, a guy looking like me got a lot of stares, yes. But the stares were of a curious type. And many people came up to me, "Oh, you're from Israel?" "No, I'm from America, and actually I speak Russian." "Wow, Orthodox Jews speak Russian?" "Yeah, I can do it." And we were able to break a lot of stigmas amongst the local population. But what made me decide that I want to take this career path is to see the emissaries, the shluchim that live in that country, were people that gave up relatively comfortable lives. Most of them in Israel, most of them from Israel, some Americans, to live in what you and I would call the corner of the world. In any respect, whether you're Jewish or you're not Jewish. Kazakhstan's a great country, don't get me wrong. But for an American and an Israeli to pick up and dedicate their lives to a community on the other side of the world, which, by the way, only in the last 50 years has become more or less of a more modernized civilization. Kazakhs are you could still go to Kazakh villages and find people that, are living lives of 100 years ago.
Sure.
People that wake up, someone who I consider one of my personal, I guess we would call it heroes.
Yes.
Is a rabbi in Kazakhstan who once a week gets up in the morning, 4:00, drives outside of the city to a dairy farm and milks cows so that his family, and not just his family, the community can have kosher milk, because that's the only way you can get kosher milk in Kazakhstan. This guy, a couple times a week, heads to a different farm where he slaughters animals. He slaughters sheep, he slaughters cows. I'm sorry, vegetarians and vegans, but that's the only way to get kosher meat into Kazakhstan. And when I saw this mode of living where you live solely for the sake of other people, that was enough. I was all aspirations of business, whatever, out the window.
So Shmuel, spending this time in so many places in the world, still, why Canada? Why Toronto? You could have ended up in Kazakhstan. You could have stayed in Jerusalem. You could have stayed in New Jersey.
Well, so my wife and I got married, and we decided that we do want to dedicate our lives to serving a Jewish community wherever that is. Automatically, Kazakhstan was unfortunately off of the list. My wife said, "There's no way you're going to get me to live there." And it's an interesting story. I'm saying, ultimately, we had different options. One option that I actually explored is, like I told you, my friend's father was living in a Russian occupation, a city called Kherson, which is the only major city that the Russians have been able to actually occupy since the war started. We were looking into moving there, and no offense to my colleague who I adore with all of my heart, but we're very thankful that we're not there. We looked at other options in Ukraine, and it actually came down to two options. It was Toronto or Moscow. But I was telling you how things happen for a reason, and looking back at that story, it's like I'm thinking.
And what year would this be roughly?
2018. My wife and I got married fall 2017. I first came to visit Toronto summer 2018 to see what's happening. And you just see how it's like a movie. It's like everything fell right into place, and you're like, this cannot be by accident.
If you think about what has transpired in the world over the last 4 years, between pandemic, between wars, many would say you made the right bet on this one. You
know what? I find that wherever the person's supposed to be, that's where you're supposed to be. And we were supposed to be in Toronto. It was so clear. It was so clear. And if you ask me, my dream. Sorry, Mom. My mom didn't like this part. That my dream was to live on that side of the world. I became so obsessed, so in love, and like I said, I adapted. I talked to people on with local slang. I paid off police officers. I did the whole deal. I've been there and back a few times. And my dream was to move to that part of the world, and my wife obviously wanted to be close to her mother, and that was a very tough period in our married life where we had to decide, okay, where is our future going to be? Yes. And I told my wife, I said, we have to think about ourselves, and we have to think about where does it make the most sense. And it just, like dominoes, each option fell out of place until the only option standing was Toronto. And obviously that's the hand of God working. I'll tell you a crazy story. The way it works is, in Chabad, there's 5,000 emissaries across the world. Some of those emissaries are old timers that were sent out from headquarters in New York, but ever since the 80s, most emissaries are hired by whoever's on scene over there. And we do have a headquarters in New York, in 770 Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn, but it's more of a federalized kind of system where it's decided on the ground. So the way the way we do it, and I have many friends now friends and classmates live all over the world. We do our own research. We look for opportunities. We reach out to the people that need to be reached out to, and that's what I did. I reached out to anybody I could. I told my wife. My wife was very against moving to Toronto. It was very hard for her. She, like I said, immigrated to New York when we got married, and she was already far away from home. And we kind of had an understanding that, like I said, I wanted to go back to that part of the world, and so it was definitely a hard thing to do. And I reached out to the head of the Jewish community of Moscow, saying, "Look, we're a young couple. We speak Russian, which is not something that comes very often in the Chabad world. So it's a very niche skill, and we want to go. We're interested in going to Moscow." And he was very open to it, and he said, I want to talk to you. I'm coming to New York in a few weeks. Why don't we meet in New York? Great. I was waiting for that moment. And Thursday, he came in probably Thursday, I think. Thursday, Friday, obviously Shabbat, we didn't have our phones. Saturday night, Sunday, radio silence. And I was working then in school, and I was sitting in my office Sunday morning and during work hours, and the guy's like, "Okay, come to a different place, 45 minutes away. I'm going to be there in like an hour. Can you meet me there?" I'm sorry, I don't have a job. I mean, I do have a job. I can't just run away. And then we agreed that we're going to speak later, and then we never spoke, and then that option fell out of thing, and then we ended up moving to Toronto. We have a yearly conference of all the Chabad rabbis in the world. I was by dinner on one of the nights, I found an open seat with a friend of mine. It was next to the director of...
Where was this dinner at?
In New York. New York City.
Okay. It's always in New York?
It's always in New York. Yes. The International Conference of Chabad Rabbis. Massive event. Awesome. One of my highlight of my year. And I sat down to the guy, and I knew who he was. He's the director of the young adult programming in Russia, all of Russia. And I introduced myself, Shmuel Neft, and he said his name, and I'm sitting and eating, and he shows me his phone. He says, "Is this you?" And he shows me a picture of myself, my WhatsApp profile icon. Okay. So I'm like, "Yeah, it is me." He's like, "Did you say you're going to Toronto?" Because we were still living in New York. We'd already signed the papers. We were moving to Toronto. We're doing all the immigration stuff.
Yes.
So I already was able to go to the conference. So I said, "Yeah, we're moving to Toronto." He said, "Are you sure you don't want to rethink that?" I said, "Why?" He says, "Because I'll tell you a funny story." He said, "This guy that's the head of the community, he a few months ago sent me your number and said that this guy reached out to me. He's interested in getting a position in Moscow. I think he's someone that we should put in touch with you. He's something, seems like prime for your program. And for us, the young adults program was what we wanted to do." Yes. And this rabbi, he says, "Yeah, let me do it. Let me get on it." So the other rabbi, the head of the community, said, "You know what? Wait on it for a little bit. I'm going to talk to him myself." Yes. And that conversation never happened. And it's, again, I tell you, it's like a movie. It's like a movie, and you're watching it, and you're like, "This is scripted." It is scripted.
Because if they had that conversation, you're probably in Moscow.
Yeah, you bet. I'd be in Moscow with no Starbucks. No
McDonald's.
McDonald's for us isn't such a big deal. but even like and I dreamed of being in Moscow, but it's not about what I dreamed. It's about where I had to be, and that's how we ended up in Toronto.
Thank you for enjoying today's episode of the Chosen Life podcast. Go ahead and hit the subscription button below and the notification bell to catch all of our great shows. And remember to contact the Chosen Lawyers when you are ready for your next real estate and commercial transaction. Go to kormans.ca.